Could your fish be smarter than you think? It isn't just running on instinct. It plans, it solves problems, and some fish do it using tools. This isn't a metaphor. This is documented science. Let's step away from the aquarium for a moment and go a little deeper. A fish pulled a clam out of the sand, held it in its mouth, then swam for a long time searching for the right rock. Found it, lifted the clam, struck it again and again. The shell cracked. It ate. This was recorded on camera in 2009, and when the scientific community saw that footage, the response was, "We need to rethink everything we thought we knew about fish." Today's topic is fish that use tools. Not just one species, fish from different oceans, different evolutionary branches, each independently developing the same capacity without any knowledge of the others. And when you see the fish I've saved for the end, I think it's genuinely going to surprise you. But first, you need to understand how this story began. And it starts with a strange sound heard by a diver. Professional diver Scott Gardner is underwater, and he hears a strange sound, a cracking noise, over and over again. He swims toward it, and at first, he doesn't understand what he's looking at. A foot-long tuskfish was holding a clam in its mouth and slamming its head against a rock. With each strike, the clam bent a little further. Then the shell broke. The fish ate what was inside, spit out the shell, and swam away. Gardner looked around. The area around the rock was covered in broken shell fragments. This wasn't the first time. This fish had come to this rock many times before. When behavioral ecologist Cullen Brown from Macquarie University examined the photographs, he said, "This fish was delivering pinpoint-accurate strikes. This isn't random. It requires skill." But for the scientific community to accept this as evidence, one more thing was needed. Video. 2009. Palau. Evolutionary biologist Giacomo Bernardi is underwater, and he spots an orange-dotted tuskfish doing something. The fish is blowing water from its mouth into the sand, lifting it, uncovering a clam underneath. Then it picks up the clam and starts swimming. The fish swims for a long time, searching for the right rock, finds one, picks up the clam, and starts striking again and again. Without hands, this takes some effort and time. Oops. And then the shell cracks. It eats. When this footage was published in the journal Coral Reefs in 2011, Bernardi said, "The animal digs up the clam, then swims a long distance to find a suitable rock. This requires serious forward thinking. For a fish, this is truly remarkable, because here's the critical point. This fish isn't just using a tool, it's planning multiple steps in sequence. Dig the sand, extract the clam, find the right rock, strike, eat. And if it ends up at the wrong rock, one that's too smooth, too soft, it goes back and looks for another one. This is something learned. It is not something taught." So does this behavior only show up in the wild? Zoologist Łukasz Paszko from the University of Wrocław is feeding a Sixbar wrasse in an aquarium. He gives it a food pellet much larger than normal. The fish can't swallow it, can't crack it with its jaw. Paszko waits. What will the fish do? Nothing happens for a few weeks. Then one day, Paszko looks at the tank and sees this. The fish has picked up one of the pellets in its mouth, carried it over to a piece of rock in the tank, and is striking it against the surface. Just like the tuskfish in the wild. Nobody taught it. Nobody showed it. Paszko observed this behavior 15 times. And what makes this remarkable is that this fish had never encountered shellfish in its life. It figured out on its own that the only way to break the oversized food was to strike it against something. Scientists call this reinvention, independently arriving at the same solution in a completely different context. If you've been enjoying the video so far, leaving a like would genuinely mean a lot to me. Let's keep going, because this system doesn't succeed every time. The tuskfish sometimes picks the wrong rock. The clam drops and disappears, and sometimes rival fish move in and take the meal that's already been prepared. Bernardi made a point of highlighting this. There are always opportunistic fish, what researchers call scroungers, lurking around the rock. The moment the tuskfish cracks the shell open, others dart in. This reveals something genuinely interesting. This is happening inside a social environment. And are the opportunistic fish waiting there because they've learned to recognize the behavior? Are they copying it? Science doesn't have a complete answer to that yet, but the fact that the question even exists suggests these fish may have a capacity for social learning. I made a promise at the beginning of the video. Here it is. The Archerfish. It comes from the tropical rivers of Southeast Asia, small, 2 to 4 inches long, and it has one ability that scientists debated for years. Does this count as true tool use? This fish uses water as a tool. It brings its lips together, forming a narrow channel between its tongue and the roof of its mouth. Then it compresses its gill covers, and water is launched through that channel as a jet that can travel up to 10 feet, hitting insects, spiders, and even small lizards right out of the air. That alone is astonishing. But here's what's even more astonishing. This fish adjusts that jet based on its target. Stefan Schuster and his team at the University of Bayreuth in Germany documented this. The Archerfish changes the pressure of the jet and the timing of how the water mass builds up based on the speed and distance of its prey. It actively controls the dynamics of its mouth opening, the way an athlete adjusts the muscles in their arm to throw a stone different distances. Schuster put it this way: under the strictest definition of tool use, the animal must shape the tool to fit the task. We now know the Archerfish does exactly that. This is genuine tool use. In other words, this fish shapes water into a spear. Why does tool use matter? Because for decades, tool use was treated as the benchmark of higher intelligence. When Jane Goodall discovered chimpanzees shaping twigs to extract termites, the scientific world was shaken. Then crows were added to the list, then elephants, then dolphins. Fish were never on that list. Now they are. And Australian fish biologist Culum Brown's take is direct. The Wrasse family occupies a position among fish similar to what primates and crows occupy among other animals, a group with a far higher number of documented tool use cases than anyone expected. But he adds this: we don't study fish as intensively as birds and mammals. Watching them underwater is far more difficult. It's possible all wrasse species do this. It happens very quickly, and it's easy to miss. That last sentence says a lot. There may be far more we don't know yet. A fish pulled a clam from the sand, searched for the right rock, found it, cracked the shell, ate. Another fish shaped water into a projectile and struck an insect 10 feet away. Another fish encountered a problem it had never seen before and solved it using the most fundamental solution in human history, striking one object against another entirely on its own. All of this coming from a fish, from a creature whose brain is roughly the size of a pea. And now consider this: how many species in the ocean do we haven't observed yet? How many behaviors are out there, still undocumented? That world beneath the water gets a little more complex every year. Which one surprised you the most? The Tuskfish using a rock? The Archerfish turning water into a weapon? Or the Sixbar wrasse solving a brand new problem alone in an aquarium? Write it in the comments. In the next video, I'll get into why fish sometimes bite the finger you dip into the water. If you don't want to miss it, that small button is right below. See you under the water.